at the moment, there's a lot of information going on about me for good reason, but some of it's right, some of it's wrong, some of it's half right. And I think I speak a lot in really short form, and sometimes that short form can be taken to mean something that it doesn't. So I just thought this would be the perfect opportunity to sit down, give my story so far. How did I get to that first World's Strongest Man? What did I do physically to become a good strongman? Mentally, how have I got to where I am at the moment? Who was I in the past? How is that different now? All of those types of things. So that story is to come. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Like, comment, subscribe, and enjoy. So I was born in Barrie, Ontario, and I grew up in a place called Midhurst, which is a very nice suburb just outside of Barrie. My parents split when I was 4. We lived in a beautiful big home. They split. And then we moved to a home in the same very nice subdivision that was like, it might have been 2,000 square feet, 2,200 square feet. Very, very small house. My bedroom was super tiny, but my mom didn't want us to move out of the subdivision because it was a really nice place to live. I went to school at a place called Forest Hill. It was a public school, again in a city called Midhurst. Mostly during elementary school, my teachers didn't like me, for reasons that you could probably interpret. I wasn't particularly interested in doing much work. I told a story yesterday, actually. My mom thought that I was not doing my schoolwork and I was not engaged because I was gifted. And so I took the test to see if I was gifted, and it was determined that I was. And then I was in the gifted class for about a week until I got kicked out for not doing my work there either. But I mean, during that time, I played rep hockey the whole time. I played between AE and A. For those of you who don't know rep hockey, like triple A is unreal, double A, single A, AE, house league. So it was low level rep. Led my team every year in points, goals, and penalty minutes. But not penalty minutes in the sense that you think. I've actually my entire life never been in a fight, but it would be lazy penalties. It'd be like hooking, tripping.
What position did you primarily play?
Right wing, always right wing. Yeah, I wasn't particularly interested in defense, even though that's normally like the big guy thing. I wanted to score. But in elementary school, I played every sport that was available to us. I don't really count those as things that I've played. But towards the end of elementary school, I started getting pretty serious into golf, which actually started when I was maybe 5 years old, and started competitively when I was probably 9 or 10. Was on a couple of junior tours, won one of the junior tours. Then I was invited, in grade 8, I was invited down to Florida to a golf school of a guy by the name of Sean Foley, who was Tiger's Woods coach during Tiger's prime. And he had a small group of kids who would go to high school part-time and basically did golf for the rest of the day with the idea of grooming them to go up to NCAA golf. So I went down there for a week. I played unbelievable. I got invited to join the school, but I just didn't want to move to Florida. So then once I got to high school, competitive golf was basically on the back burner, and I just played all of my high school sports. And that sort of started my football career. And for those of you who know high school in North America, that's a great way to have a friend group and fit in and sort of be the cool guy. So I played football in the fall, played basketball in the winter, and then in the summer, it really depended through high school. One time I did swimming. Then when I wasn't swimming, the spring was rugby, which I would argue rugby, my ability in rugby matches my ability in strongman. I think that for me is like, that's the team sport that I thrived the most. I had this attitude in high school that I didn't need friends or people to accomplish anything that I wanted. All I needed was to know enough information and invent something smart enough that people are just going to want to buy it, and that was that. So I didn't go to a single party in high school. I had a huge number of acquaintances. I was voted to be valedictorian, gave the valedictorian speech, but wasn't really that close to the whole lot of people. Really had 1 or 2 close friends my whole sort of high school experience. Then I went to do my undergraduate University of Guelph, and I actually didn't have the grades to get into the program that I wanted to get into. So I got a call from the football coach that said he could get me into applied nutrition, which was a Bachelor of Arts. and then maybe I could transfer over. And I didn't really want to do that. And I asked if I could get into human kinetics because I knew a lot of guys on the football team were in human kinetics. He pulled a couple of strings, and that's what got me into my undergraduate program. Otherwise, I would have probably had a hard time getting into university in the first place. I went there a couple of weeks early for training camp, and football training camp is just different. At the time, I was 17 years old when I went over to university, and socially it was so hard to fit in with guys who are like 23. And I think if you have an element where you lack confidence, then sometimes normal initiation could feel like you're not fitting in, or they're not, like they're picking on you, when really it's just becoming part of the brotherhood. But I had no time for that. I didn't like that. Still, I don't think I like that behavior. But I think that's really what drove me to move on from football. On top of the fact that like knocking your head and 2-a-day practices, and it was just way too much for me.
So how long did you play football then?
Not like half of the first year.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean that was really tough because like, the contrast to my mom is that my dad, like he loved me playing football. That was a mark of pride that like his son was on the university football team. And when I stopped playing football, I was about 245 pounds. I worked through the first year of my undergraduate degree, and I went from 245 to about 302. And it was not a cute 302. I still trained, but I was 302 and could like bench 315 for a couple. I could maybe squat 4.5 plates. I wasn't all that strong, and sort of got in a bit of a like mental rut. And actually during first year, I called home and I said that I just don't understand what I'm here for, because I could read these books at home. I could be working right now. I could be making money. I could be like, I've genuinely during the time of university, through the entire thing, I felt as though it was a bit of a waste of time. And in retrospect, the way I treated it was a waste of time, because I was interested in going and getting good grades, and I think the most valuable thing you can get at university is going to make connections, to meet other people, to form that professional network. And I didn't fully take advantage of that in my undergrad, which is definitely a regret of mine. Went all through second year. I played intramural sports with some guys who I knew from before. I lost a bunch of weight, taking us to summer after year 2, and that's when I did my bodybuilding show. And I was horrible. I came 11th out of 12. I didn't have a whole lot of regard for posing routine. I simply wanted to see, could I get shredded? The funny psychological bit being, like, when you look at those old pictures, I still thought, like, there's weight to lose. And I think a lot of people, it's important to recognize, like, it's a normal feeling and well accepted that girls feel this way. And like, I feel like I'm always a bit out of shape, and I feel like, I don't look the best. And I don't think enough respect is given that, like, a lot of guys struggle with body image, whether it's like they want to bulk up more, or they're too big. Or I think every person, just generally speaking, has some sort of skewed perception of their own self-image. And I was certainly a victim of that at the time. And whilst that's the hardest thing I've ever done, the bodybuilding, and the thing that I've felt the most reward from, probably up to World's Strongest Man, it also creates this really difficult, like, that's like the best you've ever looked. That's as shredded as you've ever been. And I know that no matter how hard I work now to lean down, unless I make the full commitment to go all the way, it'll never be quite the same. So I'm not sure how I feel about having that perception, but the bodybuilding was the most difficult thing ever. So I said, I want to eat everything in the world. What can I do to combat that? And my mom was a runner at the time, and has been for a very long time. I think she's done 7 or 8 marathons. I thought that was a really good idea, on top of the fact that this is when my career path was starting to take place, and at the time I thought I was going to be in high performance athletics, and I thought, okay, well, I haven't had any sort of concerted aerobic training, so I thought, okay, well, let's give that a crack. Genetically, I'm really lucky, as you all know, but I was really lucky in the sense that I went out on my first run and I ran a slow 10K. And that was just my base. I could just go out and run 10K, and that's just what I could do. Bear in mind, I was about 225, 230 at the time, which on my frame is really quite lean and quite small. I maintained that weight through my marathons, and if you see those pictures, there's not a lot of substance there. That you don't. I might look stronger than a marathon runner, but you certainly wouldn't look at me and go like, strong. So I was wrapping up my degree. I got incredibly lucky to get a job with a professional basketball team called the KW Titans. So I got myself in, head strength and conditioning coach with that team, did a bit of traveling around the east coast of Canada with them, and basically I was in charge of all of their gym workouts and their conditioning during practices. During that time, I sort of realized that as cool as it is to work with guys who used to play in the NBA and who went to the big schools in America, it just didn't feel meaningful enough. You know, whether we won or lost the game, the energy that I put in didn't feel like I was making the impact that I was hoping to or thought I could. And I thought if I could get out of the country and I could just hit a bit of a reset button and go on a mission of personal development while getting my master's, that would be awesome. I found exercise physiology, and that synced up a lot with what I wanted to do with my life in terms of greater impact to people, really meaningful impact, and being able to change someone's life. So I went off to Australia. Now, just before I did, maybe 2-3 months before, I met Ashley, and it was like, right, okay, this sucks. I was fully committed to not continuing, but I had a conversation with my dad, and I said, there's something about this girl, she's just different, it's too bad I'm moving, but it is what it is. And my dad actually is the one who went like, well, what's the point of breaking up just for the sake of it? And you might as well give it a crack. You know, if you're open to the possibility of it not working, then see where it goes. There's no better person than the person in the first 2 weeks of a relationship. It's like, I at the time I didn't have a job because I was leaving shortly, and she was at university, and so I'd be sleeping in her bed, and she would bring me water and snack to wake up, and then she'd leave me a little lunch. Oh, this is amazing. So that was my reference point when I left. I'm like, I need some of that forever. Absolutely. So I went away. We decided, okay, well, we're not going to break up. Let's see how it goes. We'll do the distancing as best we can. She's got this idea that she's like, no, I knew. And I was like, I don't know. I really hope, but I don't know. And I went off. I landed in Sydney. All I had was an address, and that's it. I think there was 7 people living in this townhouse that would be smaller than my apartment right now, and it was difficult living. I really got stuck into Call of Duty. I trained really hard at the University of Sydney gym. I really had no athletic goal when I was training for that first year of my master's. To be honest, I didn't, as I got higher up in school, I found it easier and easier. I found like I didn't have to put that much work in. I didn't have to go to lectures all that often. But I did start to have the mission of just self-improvement, being able to speak to some people, form some connections, and you sort of have to. You're not just going to sit there by yourself for years on end. So I went to all of the orientations, there was an international orientation, a graduate program orientation, and I met some people who now are still friends, who are now coming over to the wedding later this year, and super, super excited about that. So that was sort of first year, just making it work. I come back home between first and second year, and this is when I was lifting heavy at the gym, and this is the injury that you guys have seen, where I was lifting heavy and I injured my back, and I had to go to the hospital. Never really got diagnosed, but the ambulance came to the gym. They took me away. I was given painkillers. I couldn't walk for a handful of days, and I think this sort of speaks to, I wasn't powerlifting at the time. I wasn't doing strongman. I just wanted to 1 rep max deadlift. That's just my inclination. I ended up going back to Australia for my second year of my master's, and at that time I was trying to find a gym to train, and I loved industrial park style gyms. I love kind of grungier gyms, and this took me to Adonis Athletics in Granville, and I started powerlifting not long after because that's what all the other guys did. I powerlifted for that year, and then I competed in the APU, which is the IPF affiliate in Australia. I won the national championship, I believe with an 832 total in the under 120 category. Then I did the national championship, which was over in Perth. Look up quokkas. Quokkas are the coolest animals ever on Rottnest Island, an island off of Perth. They have no predators, so they're super friendly, and they only exist on that island. They're the cutest things ever. Anyway, that was the national championship. I think I did one more powerlifting meet afterwards, where I might have totaled 850 or something like that. but it sort of got old quick, 3 lifts over and over and over. So so now we're on to strongman. First comp out in Penrith. I won that by, I think, 1 point over a guy who is really quite solid. His name's Blake Ashmore, and if he ever fully committed, I think he would definitely make it to Giants, and I think he'd be okay at Giants. And that sort of sparked my interest, because then I had the Arnold Amateur to train for. Somewhere in this time, it's all blurry to me, but COVID happened, and so comps were sort of on and off and on and off. I did a comp called Coal City Strongest, and I did New South Wales State Championship. I did ACT's State Championship, which is the state neighboring New South Wales, and I won all of those shows. Those are all the full shows I did before World's Strongest Man. But I pulled 475 at sort of a deadlift exhibition, just a one-off show. I did Static Monsters, where I was 485 axle deadlift and 185 log. Officially, I pressed 200, but it was... I pulled back the rep because it wasn't... To give the full story of that, the organizer wasn't sure what to do, because he wanted to give referees the authority, but I had broke the world record, and he didn't want it to be a soft world record. And so I said, well, I'll solve the problem for you. I'll pull it out myself. And this is the first time I've actually spoken about doing that. But that's why I pulled it back in the first place, because I loved that during COVID there was an opportunity for people to get out and compete. And I thought that's the best way for me to continue to help that sport, the event, move forward. So we were prepping to move back to Canada, and I didn't really have much thought to continue strongman past just moving home. I took a look at the local area, and there was no strongman gyms, nowhere I could use the implements. So either I had to bring them all over or just sort of give it up. So I was sort of walking myself down the path of getting ready to give it up when I was moving back. I actually got invited to the World Deadlift Champs before I got invited to World's Strongest Man. And so then, okay, cool, Deadlift Champs. I don't think I was ever invited to the full show of Deadlift Champs until after everything happened. But I was on to Julian Howard and trying to use his channel to get in the ear of the World's Strongest Man guys to see if I could make some noise. Genuinely, to my core, I didn't believe I had a chance, but I thought that if I tried, who knows? And I got announced as a reserve shortly after I had moved back, or it might have been, it was shortly after I moved back, because I remember I was sitting here, I was literally emailing World's Strongest Man as the announcements were coming out, say, hey, I hope you haven't lost my email, I'm ready to come, let me know, because I had got one months before saying you're a potential athlete for Worlds. So I didn't get an invite, I got a reserve invite, and that was the most difficult part of my entire strongman journey, is sitting on a reserve invite and not knowing if I was going to compete or not. It was maybe 4 weeks out, but then Rana Heinla pulls out. God love you, Rana. Rana's the real MVP in this whole story. Rana pulls out. I get the nod to go in, and I had like 3.5 weeks. I was training for it up to that point, but I had 3.5 weeks where I knew that I was going to be competing.
I love the old videos from AK. Because he said that there's no strongman kit here anywhere in Barrie, right? Because strongman wasn't a thing here in Barrie.
Yeah.
And then all the bars and everything.
Yeah, slowly, if you look at AK's repertoire over the past 12 months, it's slowly gotten more and more indoctrinated. But at the time, I didn't have Atlas stones to train on. Sorry, I had brought, though, all equipment from Australia over. I paid for it all to come. And I still have multiple yokes, multiple dumbbells, multiple logs, full stone set. I've got really everything I need to start a gym. I've got 15 barbells in my mom's basement, and so eventually I will start a gym. I've got all the equipment. But I moved back, and I was maybe going to Worlds, maybe not. I had a small sort of online coaching business-ish, and we were looking for a space for the clinic. And I sort of took these 3 things and said, well, let's give them all a crack, and if they happen, they happen, and they probably won't. In which case, okay, cool. They all happened. They all happened quite a bit. So, clinic starts up, I get the invite to Worlds, I go off to Worlds, and I actually had to shut the clinic for a week and a half, maybe 3 weeks after it opened, which was so difficult. anyone who's opened a business know how stressful it is at the start, and to take yourself away it's a big risk, and I owe a lot to a business partner. Now, to clarify this as well, even though I don't feel like I need to, I own the clinic here in partnership with my partner over in Australia, but we both own it. I keep saying that it's a franchise. It's not a franchise. It's its complete own entity where we're partners in that. Anyway, that's that. So I go to Worlds come 8th, and then straight after Worlds, I got invited to Royal Albert Hall, but it was either Colin or Darren asked me if I'd like to come out to it, like at the after party, and even then I said, oh, I'll have to see if I can take some time from the clinic. Like, I'm not sure. Let me think about it. And I actually didn't accept the invite for a little while. And then really, like, the rest is history. But that's the story up to first World's Strongest Man. And everything that I've done, all the sports, a little bit about my upbringing. I just think, I speak a lot about how I had a lot growing up. I think I just have the impression that I had a lot, even though and my mom struggled to make sure that we didn't want for anything, and I did have the perspective of like my dad, who's probably the hardest worker I know, but he would probably admit himself that like sometimes sometimes it's a challenge to hold on to the fruits of the labor, to put it simply, and so I've had a really unique, vast upbringing, and yeah, I was well off, but when I went to Australia, I learned what well off is, and that wasn't me. You know, a Europe trip a year and playing 1 rep sport a year is amazing. It's a lot more than a lot of people could have, but I wasn't given. I had no scholarship. I wasn't given. I didn't go to private school. I didn't have. I didn't have a nice car. I didn't have anything other than just I was provided all of the tools to be successful, and that's basically it. And I'm incredibly fortunate for that, incredibly thankful for that. But that's sort of where it began and ended, and that's where I hope to begin and end it for my kids. No matter how much I have, I don't think there's any reason that you should be just dishing it out to a kid for them to sort of take the easy path, so to speak.
Yeah, so that was the main purpose of this video, was to just, you've seen a lot of things online, and who better to actually tell the story than the man himself.
Yeah, well now there's a point where the timeline, the facts, that everything is, now it's all in one place. This is the truth in its long form. This is my story in its long form. So I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope you get a perspective of how long it took me to become World's Strongest Man, how long it took me to become a good strongman, even though I didn't have the perspective that I was training for that, and maybe some of the stories and the attributes to why I behave, why I speak the way I do, why I say things the way I do. Maybe that gives some greater context into me, who I am, and I think if you've watched this, go ahead, go over, watch the doc Beyond Strong, and you'll mostly know everything about me. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate you. Like, comment, subscribe. Keep pushing the algorithm forward. We look forward to bringing you a lot more content over the year. Let us know what you want to see, and we will make it happen. Take care, lift heavy, and be kind.